The year was the year was 1957. I remember it graphically because I was playing uptown in Harlem in New York City at the famed Apollo Theater with Dizzy Gillespie and his big band. It was a hot summer's day. I think it was in August. And although the theater was air conditioned, it was a little dismal. And during the break, we opted to go outside and brave the heat at the rear of the theater on 126th Street. See, the entrance was on 125th Street, and the exit was 126th Street. And we were lollygagging and talking, waiting for the next show to begin. And what the Apollo Theater did in those days, they wouldn't show an A picture. It would direct too much attention to the picture, and they wanted the attention to go to the stage show. So most theaters showed a B-class sort of picture, but the Apollo was different. They went into the realm of G, H, and L. And we were waiting for the announcement to bring us back on stage. We never did see the person speaking, but we could hear him through the speakers, and it would be something like, all on band, which meant it was time for us to go take our places behind the curtain that was closed, and of course the stage was dark. And then once we were in our places, he would make a further announcement, and it was extolling the virtues and the quality of the band, the best band in the world, and things like that. And sometimes what he was saying was true, and sometimes it wasn't. And we would wait for all this to happen for the next show to begin. But during the meantime, just up at 126th Street and around the corner on 8th Avenue, now I know you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, but it's the absolute truth. Right in the middle of Harlem on 8th Avenue, there was an oasis. There were camels, sand, dates, sheiks. Well, it was actually a bar, but it was like an oasis, you know what I mean? And the guys would go there and and sometimes they stayed just a little too long, and when they came back, the performance was a little, but with 15 guys, you could cover it, you know. And the late Walter Davis Jr. made his turn coming toward us on 126th Street from the Oasis. And we noticed that Walter was walking quite unstably and waving his arm meaninglessly. And we all began to chuckle, thinking perhaps Walter had been with the wine just a bit too long. It did happen from time to time. But as he got closer, we noticed that he was crying. Walter Davis Jr. crying, a huck of a man, at least 250, maybe even 275 pounds. Crying on a Harlem street in broad daylight. Something had to be amiss, but what? He got closer yet, and we heard the chilling words come from his mouth. Clifford Brown had been killed in an automobile accident the night before. We've all frozen disbelief. He wasn't known as Clifford during those days. He was simply Brownie. No, it couldn't be true. You hear that Joe was killed or died the night before, and you see him on the street the next day. Joe, I thought you were dead. Ron Carter told me he died twice. Just in the middle of that, we heard the bell ring, and the announcement was made. We went and took our places on the darkened stage, waited for the announcement. The curtain swung dramatically open, the lights came up to full intensity, and the band went into what's known in the business into a flag wave for something fast and loud. But it belied the inner feelings that we all shared there on that bandstand in that moment, not knowing if what we had heard was true or not. And as we were playing this fast, loud song, it belied our feelings as I saw a few tears from side to side, because we all loved Brownie. But after the show was over, in fact, we did find out that not only was he killed, but Richard Powell, the pianist, and Richard Powell's new bride, who was driving the car. Actually, they were on the way to Chicago. Max Roach, Sonny Rollins, who was subbing for Harold Land at the time, and what was the bass player's name? George Morrow. Yeah, they were in Chicago, and they were going to open the next day at the Blue Note downtown in the Loop. And Richard and Brownie decided that they would leave around 3 o'clock the night before because there wasn't much traffic on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Clifford was asleep on the back seat. Richard was asleep on the passenger side, and his bride was driving the car. Well, she didn't have much experience. It was raining torrents. She was going at the highway speed. Just as the road made an abrupt right turn, she was beside a tractor trailer, and the spray from the back wheels overpowered the windshield wipers so that she couldn't see clearly. The road made a turn, and she went straight ahead into a bridge abutment. They were all killed instantly, and we all grieved about it so much. But the next week we opened in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. What was the name of that place? I can't remember. It was Hollywood and Vine. I was by the other day. It's a taco stand or something like that now. Yeah. But while we were there, we had a 2-week engagement. I felt so deeply about Clifford. He was such a kind man. He never used profanity. He never put any other musicians down. In fact, it was just the antithesis. He would always rave about other people's talent. Did you hear what he played on the bridge, so-and-so and so? And if you heard him talk, you'd think that he was a budding student or something. But Clifford Brown, how can I describe him? When he put that trumpet up to his lips, he could become a ferocious wild beast in his approach to the music. Or, at other times, he could become the world's most passionate lover. That's the way he was. I decided I would write a tune. And usually I used to write 2 or 3 tunes a day, but this tune was different. It took me the whole 2 weeks to write the tune because I wanted every note to reflect the qualities of Clifford as a person and as a trumpet player. And he was ascendant, only 25 years old when he met with the accident. And the 2 weeks was almost up, and I had come to work early that night and brought my uniform knowing that I would not be going back to the hotel. And Dizzy happened to come in early. So, you know, sometimes when you create things, you're too close to it, assess it properly. So I thought I would ask him, and I asked him if he had a moment to hear something. And he said yes, and he put his trumpet on the table and he sat down. And I began to play this tune that I was putting together. And after about 8 bars into the tune, he opened his trumpet case and took his trumpet out. And I said, oh my goodness, he doesn't even know the tune and he's going to try to play it. But he fooled me. He also took out a plastic flask in which he kept kerosene to lubricate his trumpet. Now, while I'm playing this tune to get his assessment of it, he began to take his valves out, put kerosene on it, and then he poured kerosene down the horn and started to blow. And he got the kerosene all over me and the floor. Oh, I was so discouraged. But I went on and finished anyway. And when I finished, he stopped and said, what is that? Maybe he likes it. I said, well, I was thinking about calling it I Remember Clifford. I'm not sure. He said, I have a recording coming up with Norman Granz in 4 weeks. Can I record this tune? Dizzy Gillespie is asking me, Benny Golson. Nobody knew who the heck I was. I mean, I could have come to San Diego and taken all my clothes off. People would have walked right by me. Asking me, could he record my song? Little did he know I used to have his picture on my wall at the foot of my bed when I was in high school, so that every morning when I'd wake up, I could dream. Maybe one day I could play with Dizzy Gillespie. Oh, I had lots of other pictures up there too, Coleman Hawkins and Don Byers. But Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, they were trailblazers. But you know, at my young age, I thought all jazz musicians had to be hip, no matter what. Now, inside, when he asked me that, I was skydiving and bungee jumping. My hero had come off the wall of that photograph and asked me, could he record my song? So me and my stupid self, I went into my hip act. You always drop one shoulder like that. and you begin to sling the arm, loosely like that. And I answered, yeah. So I thought I was hip. But we had a young trumpet player from Philadelphia, my home, also in that band. He was only 18 years old then. Blue Note Records grabbed him right away and wanted to record him. He had his first record date coming up, not in 4 weeks, but 2 weeks. That was the late Lee Morgan. Late Lee Morgan. He was the first to record, I remember, Clifford. Dizzy was the second. Donald Byrd was the third. And I thought, well, this is a trumpet piece. But lo and behold, Sonny Rollins recorded it. George Sharon recorded it. Oscar Peterson. John Hendricks put lyrics to it. Carmen McRae did it with strings. Donna Washington did it. A few years ago, the Manhattan Transfer did it. I went to Japan with Ron Carter about 3 years ago. And the Japanese, they're punctilious people. They cross every T and dot every I. You could ask them anytime, if they're real jazz fans, who played third alto with Benny Goodman in 1937? Bam! They'd tell you just like that. One of them approached me and said, do you know how many recordings there are on I Remember Clifford? I never thought about it. I said, no, I don't. He very proudly said, 334. Okay. Wow. Fantastic. Well, Clifford is no longer with us, but we have a representative with us tonight on this stage who plays fantastic trumpet, and he's going to play I Remember Clifford. And perhaps you'll do as I do every time I play it or every time I hear it. I wonder what might have happened had Clifford not been killed. He was a harbinger of his own future, and he left so many things behind for us to hear and enjoy that he really didn't need me to write this song. And I'm sorry I ever wrote it, which means I'm sorry he was killed. But Gilbert Castellanos is going to play I Remember Clifford. And I want you to pay careful attention to this young man, because he's not only going to use his trumpet and his fingers, he's going to use all of his emotions, he's going to use his mind, and he's going to use his heart as he shares his talent in this song with you. Gilbert Castellanos, I Remember Clifford. Gilbert Castellanos. Thank you, Gilbert.